Okay, so I haven't made a video in a while because we moved, and we moved like a lot of like-minded people have, further out of the city. So we found in our price range, which we were really lucky to find this place, a few acres with a house and a barn and a pond, near an area where there's not a lot of anything. So I've been really busy moving, packing, moving, unpacking, organizing. And then the house we bought is a little bit of an older house, so it needed some things done to it. So we've been doing those things and then getting our, I guess, previous home ready to be sold or rented. This video, I want to talk about the 14th Amendment, but I have a few little key points in here that I want to mention before I start going into the 14th Amendment and why I bring this topic up now. So we know the 14th Amendment, the first part of it says that, something along the lines of people are subject to jurisdictions, the federal and the state. So this isn't what it sounds like. If you have a certain frame of mind, this sounds like all state people are subject to federal jurisdiction, or all federal people are subject to state jurisdiction. But I was listening to a video of two attorneys talking probably a couple weeks ago, and they were saying that they were going to try to figure out how this particular situation would be applied with the 14th Amendment in mind. So they're trying to take this square peg and stick it into this round hole, and it really doesn't fit. So they're going to have to try to figure out how to make it fit. But the 14th Amendment has a particular way that it is applied, and certain people that it applies to. So I was watching another video, because during all my packing and unpacking and moving and driving hours and hours every week driving to this new home, I just listened to a lot of videos and different things that people are saying, and there's a lot more attorneys out there talking about legal things. So that's a good thing for us, because it sort of can be used to clarify a lot of stuff. So these other two people, I know at least one of them in this video was an attorney. The other one I'm not sure about. I can't really remember. He might have just been the host. But this attorney was saying that when it comes to case law, case law cannot be applied generally to any situation that's sort of similar. Case law applies to, and can only be applied to, according to this guy, exact situations. And he used the example of, if the situation occurred at night, and then other attorneys are going to use this case law that happened at night for their purposes, when they use it for situations other than night, they're misusing it, and the judges are allowing it. So when the case law is made and it's a situation that occurred at night, in reality, it's only supposed to be applied to situations that also occur at night. So the at night part was his example of how case laws are supposed to be applied. So I took this and I thought it was a good opportunity to explain that not only does case law apply to very specific situations, such as the at night situation, but also it applies to very specific statuses of the people involved. So the people have a status, and those statuses can be a number of different things. And so the status of the people involved also has to apply. So if there's a case law and they're applying it to a person who drives a motorcycle, then other case law or other situations where they try to use that case law, it should also be applied to people driving a motorcycle. So as a status, the person is a person with a M on their motorcycle who is a motorcycle driver who at that time was driving a motorcycle. That's my example. Now we can complicate things and say, well, the status is this person is a civil servant working for the federal government who was in the function of their duties or in the capacity of their official duties in a certain state doing a certain thing. So the status of a person can get quite complicated. So if you don't work for the government in any capacity, federal or state or county or whatever, and you're not in the military, then your status is that of a private person. And there's not, in my opinion, a lot of case law or laws that apply to private people. And then you have private people driving on the roads or private people doing certain types of work. And then you have, civil servants doing types of work. You have civil servants who work for the state who might be on federal property, federal civil servants who work for the federal government who are off federal lands on state property. And so you have all these different jurisdictions over people depending on their situation, their particular situation, and their status at the time. So that brings me to the enacting clauses. In our government, we have the United States of America, which are the states in their collective capacity, and then we have the United States, which is the military. Both these governments are supposed to have a place or a seat at Washington, D.C., where they can do their things, whatever they do. Now, the United States of America can meet anytime, and the United States the military meets at least once per year. That one time per year is supposed to be the first Monday in December, but by law they can change it. Now, that's according to the Constitution. So you have people, the United States, who are supposed to meet at least once a year, and if they want to change the date of it, they have to change it by law. They don't change it by law. The Constitution says they can change it by law, but a lot of times they change it or they add a date and they just send out orders to the military, such as what happened in September, where Trump and Hegseth called all the top brass in to meet at Quantico, Virginia. Okay, so enacting clauses are how we know who is making the law or who's speaking. And because we have constitutions, we know whether they're acting in their authority or not. So when the United States of America makes a law, it's mainly making laws for the United States, the military. And then the military can make laws for the members of the military or for the things that they can do on posts. So on these military posts, according to the Constitution, when the states ratified it, they basically agreed that they were going to allow the federal government to build military posts inside their states. And there was a whole process that's in the historical records on how this was to be done and how it was done. So a lot of the points I'm making here are not arguable. They've been twisted. That's what attorneys do, right? They twist things and they create a narrative, they create a story, and then they tell the story and they take it to court. They tell us these stories in our education systems. They teach it to new attorneys, and judges learn it, and so the whole system is twisted, and it's not the way the founders intended. So when the 14th Amendment was written back in like 1863 or 1868, it was saying that the United States people, the citizens of the United States, which are the military people, that they not only follow federal laws, but because the military posts are in a state, an individual state, they also had to follow state laws. Unless they conflicted with the Constitution or the federal laws, or in other words, military works. So the state had a right to enforce its laws on federal lands unless they conflicted with military works. So the state can't go onto federal lands that are located in that state and tell them that they have to stop handing out weapons, because that would be interfering with federal works. So when you're talking about the status of people, the enacting clause shows us what the status of those people are, because it shows us the authority that comes with that law and who has the authority to make the laws for who. So when the United States passes a law, it's passing it to all of its troops and commissioned officers in all of the states as a military work, as part of its military works. So then the state will look at that law and say, okay, this conflicts with our right to the waterways or something like that. So like if there's a river going through a federal property and the federal government says it's going to block off that riverway, and the river flows back off the federal property into the state, and it's used by farmers, then the state has the right to tell the federal government they can't block off the waterway. But when it comes to like the federal government handing out arms to military people, the state cannot interfere with that. If the federal government is doing a drill, a mass drill, the state cannot interfere with that. If the federal government is going into the state to restore a republican form of government, that is a military work, and the state cannot interfere with that. So when it comes to the 14th Amendment, at least the first part, it's saying that the state cannot interfere with federal works or the federal people doing those works. But that doesn't mean that the federal people don't have to abide by state laws. So therefore, the federal people are subject to federal jurisdiction, but also subject to the jurisdiction of the state. Now, the federal government has expanded to overseas. Now, overseas, you can't send someone like a military troop overseas and tell them that they don't have to abide by, let's just say Japanese, let's say there's a Navy base in Japan. Let's just say that the sailors, you can't tell the sailors they don't have to abide by Japanese laws. But there's a contract between the United States and the United States of America with the Japanese government on how all these jurisdictions will apply. So if the Navy base is located in Japan, and a Japanese citizen is working on the military post and commits a crime, the jurisdiction is worked out between Japan and the United States in those contracts, okay, when they leased the property. All the jurisdiction is worked out. And the jurisdiction is worked out in the United States of America between the federal lands and the state in the Constitution by the 14th Amendment, okay? So the two key points that I wanted to bring up, because I've talked about the 14th Amendment so many times before, is that the attorneys were saying how they were going to force the 14th Amendment to apply to situations that it was never intended to apply to. And two, another attorney was talking about how the case law, the specifics of the case law are supposed to stay the same for different situations. And he used the example of like at nighttime, if it applied at nighttime in the original case law, then it's supposed to be used for issues concerning nighttime. So let's say there's a cop and he stops you and he's using a case law, but that case law references something that happened at night, then the cop is misusing the case law because now he's using it in daytime practices or daytime situations. Okay, so this attorney is saying if it happened at night, then it has to apply to nighttime situations. And I'm saying if it happens to certain people of certain statuses, it can only apply to those people of similar statuses unless there's another case law of the same situation but the status of a different person. So all the specifics are supposed to be the same, and that when we look at case law, we should be also looking at the status of the person that the case was about. And historically, there's some cases that go back to during the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and the status of military people who commit crimes off military posts, or like people who work for the federal government transferring mail, and part of that mail was some gold and silver, who ran off into the state with the federal government's money. And then there was a big manhunt and they had to go hunt down these people and bring them back to the federal government in federal court to stand trial, not in state court. So the jurisdiction was worked out between the state and the federal government, so that if a federal person ran off into the state with federal property, or under contract to serve for 4 years, and he served maybe a year and then he said, screw this, I'm done with it, and he ran off into the states agree to hand those people or those things over for federal trial. Okay, so those were basically the 2 points that I wanted to make in this video, and also to let you know why I hadn't been making videos. That's because I've been moving, but even though I still have a lot to do, I'm gonna start trying to pick up on the videos again. There's a lot of things going out there in the world today. Who knows where it's gonna end up, but I'm gonna try to do more videos and keep you posted, and maybe do some outside in my backyard. It still needs a lot of work. The person who had it before didn't, a single woman, she like lost her job and was in a tough time. So we got the house, we got this place at a really good price, almost a steal. So but the backyard's really nice. I want to do some videos out there. I think you guys will enjoy the scenery. So have any questions if I'm not clear on anything in this video, don't ask me for references. I don't recall. I've been so busy. I just haven't. I've been trying to save videos in my watch later list, which is private, but I'll start trying to do better with that. But you'll just have to pardon me and trust me on this, that these issues had taken place, and they were talked among these people, and that that I'm conveying the information properly. Of course, always be skeptical, ask questions, do your own research. I think there was something else I wanted to say really quick. It was an update on something. I don't remember what it was. I'll remember as soon as I hit the unrecord button. But we'll be talking in the near future about a lot of things. And questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comments section. And I'll try to answer all of you, and I'll catch you later.